Redline logbook here. This is Danmachi Dungeon Survival Guide, Chapter 4, The Deep Floors. The deep floors make up floors 37 through, well, we don't know what the bottom. The deepest floor that we know about is floor 61, which was discovered by Zeus and Hera Familia. The deep floor. Going forward, everyone should be a level or higher, and you should at least have a party of 4. Plus, you should have specific antidotes for any poison that's going to be located from any venomous monsters. Reason for this is because you will die long before you ever make it to the surface if you ever get poisoned. You will need an assortment of magical items, including magic swords, salamander wool, undine cloth, and pretty much every other elemental spirit's robe that can possibly be discovered, from lightning to ice to etc, etc. You should also have craftsmen with you so they can maintain your equipment at all times, and basically any necessities that you can imagine that are necessary to fight a war, because that's basically what the deep floors are. They are a war. The first section of the deep floors is floor 37, the White Palace. The reason it's given this name is because all the floors and walls are made of solid white stone. And the walls are so tall, we actually do not know what the ceiling looks like. But it is most likely more white stone. It gets its name Palace from the simple fact that it has 5 separate ring-shaped walls, similar to that of Attack on Titan. And within each wall, obviously, there is a section. The most inner section is referred to as the throne room. The second section is referred to as the knight's room. The third section is referred to as the warrior's room. The fourth section is referred to as the soldier's room. And the fifth section is referred to as the beast room. In truth, these rooms don't actually have any meaning to their names. They were given just by the adventurers who went there. In truth, the monsters that spawn throughout the White Palace spawn throughout the White Palace. It doesn't matter what section. The only exception being the Monster Rex. In total, when you add up all 5 sections, it's actually the size of Aurorio itself. There's also a place within the warrior section known as the Colosseum. The Colosseum, a giant bowl with 4 bridges, north, south, east, and west, allowing you to go in and out of the Colosseum. Don't do this. That would be incredibly stupid. The Colosseum is a place where monsters perpetually and infinitely spawn. No matter how many times they die, just new ones instantly grow back. And the reason for this constant death and rebirth is because all the monsters within the Colosseum are actually fighting each other and killing each other. It is actually one of the most confusing places of the dungeon because it originally did not exist in the White Palace. It just appeared a few decades prior. Also, the monsters on this floor have extreme levels of combat ability. For example, the Barbarian. Their way of fighting is usually compared to that of the Minotaur, where they have insane levels of muscular stir that acts as a defense, while primarily using weaponry to fight. They are equal to a level 3 or 4 in combat strength. Common drop items are their fur and organ. Another monster you'll face is the Lizardman Elite. They are similar to their cousins, the Lizardmen, that you'll find on the middle floors, but they have blue scales instead of red. Their scales are so hard, it's equivalent to heavy armor. Their combat strength is that of a level 3 or 4. Another monster you'll be facing is the Obsidian Soldier. These are giant hulks of cooled down lava with a purple orb in their center. They're actually quite slow and not very agile, but their obsidian bodies are magic proof. As such, you have to destroy them in close combat with weaponry, which is dangerous because their fists are basically giant boulders. A common drop item is their stone body. One of the most dangerous monsters you'll be facing is the Skull Sheep. The reason for this is because the White Palace is borderline pitch black. Even with a level 4's advanced sight, it's basically impossible to see. And the Skull Sheep are basically invisible, because excluding their heads, their entire body is covered by a skin that's like ripped cloth. This skin blends in with the White Palace, making them basically invisible. And the most terrifying thing about them is that the fact that you'll hear them long before you see them. They rattle their skulls, and it makes a clinking sound as they get closer and closer to you. And then they fire out a bone spear from their arms. This kills most adventurers right off the bat because they don't ever see it coming. Once again, most of their body is basically invisible. A common drop item is their skin. You can actually use it as a cloak to hide from the other monsters. Also on this floor are Lump Gurus. These guys are basically wolfmen. Their advantage in a fight is their agility. Their fighting style is very much attacking you in all directions at once. The monster you should probably fear the most is probably the Pelud. It is a dragon monster with quill on its back like a porcupine. It can breathe fire, but that's not the issue. The issue is the quills. It can fire them from the back, and they're extremely poisonous. Even a high-class adventurer with Abnormal resistance still will die from this poison. You must have the antidote on hand, otherwise you will die. You will not make it to the surface. Another tricky monster is the Ooze. The Ooze is basically a slime monster of different colors. Its main way of fighting is basically its body's made of acid. You either have to kill it with magic or destroy its magic stone. Slashing at its body itself will not do any harm to it. The yellow ones are extra acidic, and so they can even burn through your sword or knife if you try cutting through it. And the blue ones, if you boil them, they actually are edible, but they do not taste good. It's more like an emergency food, basically. The Spartoids are skeleton monsters that are level 4s. They are the strongest warrior type monsters there are. They fight using a sword and shield combo made of their own bones. They're the most agile, the physically strongest, and they have a level of combat experience that's on par with that of an adventurer, not a monster. They think as they fight. They are your biggest threat. As for the physically strongest monster, that would be the Wormwell. Another level 4 monster is a giant snake that's roughly 10 meters long with 6 sentries, 3 on each side of its head that allow it to find its prey anywhere, even through the ground, because the Wormwell is able to actually tunnel through floors. As such, being attacked by it is very much an unknown. If you are, you're very unlucky. And finally, the Monster Rex, Udeus. You'll find him in the center room, the throne room. He is a giant black skeleton whose lower body is actually embedded into the ground itself. The reason why his lower body is stuck in the ground is because he's able to use it to fire off tens of thousands of skeletal spears out of the ground. His strength is on par with that of a level 6. Combined with his spears that shoot out of the ground at random areas that you cannot see coming, he also has the ability to summon and command the lower, weaker monsters, usually Spartoids. It's recommended that you fight him with an army of 30 or more level 4 adventurers, usually with magic swords and plenty of healers. But if you do fight him with a much smaller party, he will at a certain point summon out of the ground his sword. This sword is devastatingly powerful. It basically increases his power tenfold, because he's able to charge magic into the sword and do basically a massive swing that obliterates everything, even if the sword doesn't touch it. It's basically a Getsugatencho. But if your small party does kill him with the sword, you actually get to keep the sword as a drop item, and it's a very powerful weapon. Currently, Altor uses it as his primary weapon. Floor 38 is unknown. Floor 39 is another safe zone. Description of the safe zone is also unknown. Floors 40 to 43 are all unknown. Floor 44 is what it would be like if you were inside of a volcano. Magma streams, burning hot ground, terrain that's basically melting, steam everywhere. It's basically like being in hell. A common monster you'll find on floor 44 are the flame rocks. These are giant lava. Floors 45 through 48 are unknown. Floor 49 is referred to as Mortora. It's a dead rock land with salt covering the earth. A common monster you'll face are the Fomors. These are giant goatmen, basically. They primarily fight with landforms, which are in the shape of axes, swords, and clubs. You will also face the Monster Rex Belmore. Now, this Monster Rex, Altor fought him one-on-one before, and was unable to kill him, which means this Monster Rex is most likely a level 8, if not a 9. Do not fight him. Numbers mean nothing. Floor 50 is another safe zone. It has great trees and rivers that resemble veins. It's a very haunting place to be. Floors 51 through 57 are very similar in the fact that they're all flat, very large rooms that look like they're perfectly carved out. It's almost as if they were symmetrically cut. On floor 51, you'll find black rhinos. These guys are basically giant tanks. They will run through you easily. They're basically just a wall of muscle that crushes everything they stampede upon. Another monster you'll find on the 51st floor is the Defimus Spider. This is a woman spider hybrid kind of looking thing. It primarily fights using weapons, as always, but also it can spray a very toxic poison that is able to blind and melt flesh. Okay, so this one is actually quite outrageous. There is a dragon called Cadmus. Cadmus is a single dragon. There are not more than one at a time. He likes to guard a specific watering hole on the 51st floor. The thing is about him is that he's stronger than Udeus. That's right, he's stronger than the Monster Rex of the 37th floor. Cadmus is actually a level 7 monster, and it's not a floor boss. It's not a Monster Rex. He's just absurdly powerful as a singular monster. The water sea guard are actually quite valuable for medical uses, and also his common drop item is his hide. Obviously, he's a dragon, so it's going to be used for armor. Okay, so starting on the 51st floor, there's a possibility you'll encounter monsters that were born from a Demi spirit, which is a spirit that has been corrupted by the dungeon and has been turned into a monster. All these monsters have very similar attributes that are in common with one another. First off, they primarily go after magic stones. Second, they'll go after monsters, so they can eat the monsters, magic stones. Third, they'll go after magic power. And then fourth, they'll go after, living people because they like to eat food. As such, it's actually quite easy to distract them using magic stones or magic. One of these monsters is the Violas. The Violas are giant flower monsters that resemble snakes, so when their mouths are fully closed, they're on par with a level 3, and their bodies are basically impossible to smash through. You either have to use magic to blast them to pieces, or you have to cut through them. There's also the Virga, which are giant caterpillar monsters whose blood is acidic. They can also spew acid. Worst of all, when you kill them, they explode, spraying their acid blood everywhere. And you basically need to have at least a level 5's defensive stats to survive this. Otherwise, you will be melted. Basically, what I'm saying is always use magic at a distance. Another one is a trap monster, the Venethus. The Venethus is basically a Viola, but it has more of a humanoid body to it and an eyeball. What it is basically a pit. You fall into the pit. The pit is basically its stomach with stomach acid that is devouring you, and it is also hanging above you, where it is then able to use all kinds of whips and such to attack you with. It's roughly on par with a level 4. And finally, you have the Viscums. The Viscums are basically the Violas, but fucking massive. I'm talking football field size. These things are huge. They're on par with a level 5, and even that, when Bet fought against them, he couldn't do shit. And when he was a level 5. These things are just durable to the max. They also act as like the mothers to the Violas, so they can actually reproduce and basically swarm you with Violas. Okay, starting on the 52nd floor, you have basically the beginning of the dragon's territory. So yeah, 52 to 58 is basically the Valgar's dragons turf area for fighting. Now the Valgar's dragons are located on the 58th floor, all the way at the bottom, but they're able to sense you all the way up on the 52nd floor and have a fire breath so powerful that they are able to blast through every floor up to the 52nd floor and kill you without you ever even seeing one of them. And once they sense you, they will just keep bombarding you with attacks endlessly. They do not stop until they are dead, which is great and all because there are still other monsters located on the 52nd floor, like the Venomous Scorpion, which of course is a giant scorpion monster that is trying to kill you while you're being blasted with, dragon fire. Then you have two snake monsters, the Thunder Snake and the Silver Worm. So once you fight through all of these monsters while being blasted by the dragon fire, and you make it to the 56th floor, you will then have to take on the Wyverns, which are basically smaller dragon monsters that also breathe fire and like to swarm their prey using numbers. And finally, after fighting through all of that, you finally get to fight the dragon. And finally, we have floors 59 to 61. These are referred to as the Glacier territory, because it's just one giant icy wasteland. Now, because of the Demi spirit, it ended up turning floor 59 into a tropical region and then burning it to ash, turning it into a wasteland. But most likely the dungeon restored itself and it's back to being a glacier period area. There's also things that are there that are hidden that we don't really know much about that are referred to as artifacts. Like I said prior, the only people who have ever actually been here are the Zeus and Hera familias. And the Loki Familia got there once, but once again, it was to fight a Demi spirit. And that is everything we know about the deep floors. Next up is Chapter 5, Irregulars. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe, give it a thumbs up so you enjoy more Danmachi and other anime things. Thank you, and have a great day.